Hello and welcome to the Faith and Mental Health Summit. I am Susan Fleming. I'm a licensed professional counselor and business alignment therapist, equipping leaders to multiply life without burning out. And this life that I speak of is an acronym for legacy, impact, freedom, and energy. Now, I know a lot of us went into business or private practice thinking that that was going to be the avenue to having that life, having that impact, that legacy we wanted, having the financial freedom and the time freedom, only to find out that being in business for yourself requires a lot more energy, a lot more of you than just being an employee, right? So now you're wanting to scale your impact, but you can't figure out how to make that happen without investing more of yourself, more of your time, more of your energy and your effort. And the problem with investing more of you is that it leads to burnout. And perhaps some of you are already experiencing those symptoms of burnout and don't even recognize it. But there's no condemnation or judgment from me if that's where you're at. I've been there. I didn't recognize the signs. A lot of my clients I work with don't recognize the signs. So that is one of the things we're going to talk about. What are the signs of burnout that you may be overlooking? I'm also going to share with you how you can cut your hours in half and actually be more productive and more profitable when you're working from God's rest. I know for a lot of you, that's probably a really unfamiliar concept. So we are going to talk about what exactly is God's rest and what is it not? How do we enter into it? That's the most important part to know, is how do you enter into his rest and work from that position? So learning this, teaching this has changed my life. It's changed my client's life. And that's really not an exaggeration. If you will put into practice what I'm going to share with you today, your life will be transformed. Okay. So even if you're like, I'm just here to work differently, I want to learn about how to do this for business, it's going to spill over, right? We're not in a bubble. Business is not this thing off to the side by itself. We can't compartmentalize everything. So if you're learning to work from rest, you're also going to be living from rest. That's going to spill over into everything else. And that's why I say your life gets transformed. This has changed my marriage, how I parent, every relationship that I am in has been altered by learning this. So when you work in partnership with God, you can't not be changed by it. That's been my personal experience. And what I've seen with my clients is that you can literally cut your hours 30 to 60% and be 2 to 3 times more productive when you know how to pull on spiritual intelligence, grabbing those strategies from heaven and combining it with the neuroscience tools and using that for your business. So let's get into, how did I discover this? Well, enter entrepreneurship, right? Starting my own practice, I viewed this high achiever status to be an asset. Always working late into the night, pushing through exhaustion in a desperate attempt to reach my goals in service for the Lord. And I'm thinking, if you're here for the Faith and Mental Health Summit, then you're probably in the same position where you're doing it for God. So I was this high achiever who answered the emails and messages within minutes because I couldn't stand the thought of holding anyone up, having to wait for my response. Almost daily, I refused to eat lunch, always telling myself I don't have time for that. I appeared, cool and calm on the outside, but my mind was racing with this never ending to-do list just running through my head. But it didn't seem to matter how much I worked, it was never enough. There were never enough hours in the day. My task list did not decrease. The emails and messages always got replaced with more, and my thoughts never slowed down. I had migraine headaches at least once a week, sometimes multiple times during the week. If you've had a migraine, you understand how painful that is. And it became debilitating at one point, but I was having these migraine headaches and difficulty sleeping at night, which meant difficulty waking up in the morning. And even if I did somehow manage to sleep well, I would still be just exhausted throughout the day. And so my body never felt good. I never felt rested. I was achy all the time. My joints were achy. And I also started to notice this cycle of cravings. I would want salty food and then sweet food. And it especially showed up when I was really stressed at work. I also noticed I was having these breakouts of just like really dry, itchy skin. I didn't realize I was dehydrated, not drinking enough water, not taking care of myself. Mentally and emotionally, I felt out of control. I was experiencing anxiety. I had depressive symptoms, mood swings, brain fog, impaired memory. I couldn't concentrate for more than 15 or 20 minutes at a time. The biggest thing I noticed was constantly being worried about getting it wrong, getting things wrong, disappointing people, not having enough time, not having enough money, not having enough clients, just really this lack mentality. And anxiety became so normal that I couldn't remember what it felt like to be without it. And I knew that something had to give, right? Something had to change, something had to drastically change, or my body was not going to continue functioning. Like it was already declining. The headaches were increasing, digestive issues increasing, the achiness, like all that stuff going on in my body was just getting worse. And so, being a licensed therapist, naturally, my response was, well, I'll go to a psychiatrist, right? I had already been in and out of therapy, but I felt like medication was what I needed at this point. I needed something to happen quickly. And in going to see the psychiatrist, I was misdiagnosed several times over the next 2 years and put on several different medications, and none of them were working. So you can just imagine how much fun I was to be around at that point. But what I want you to notice here is that I was misdiagnosed. So, what I've just described to you are all the signs of burnout that I had attributed to other things. And that may be happening for you as well. I see now that I was susceptible to this hustle culture of business because I had entered entrepreneurship already believing I was not enough and I had something to prove. I had lived my life as this high achiever, always in performance mode. And hustle culture sends the message that the more you do, the more valuable you are. And I was definitely seeking that validation, even though I didn't consciously recognize that's what was happening at the time. So when you work alone, right, a lot of us are working from home now. And when you work alone, it's easy to lie to yourself. It's easy. However, the evidence of what was going on for me would soon be just undeniable, that my work ethic alone was not going to sustain my business. I had to do something different. What I found was that I had textbook symptoms of adrenal fatigue, and I didn't even know it, right? Like you can actually go past burnout into this adrenal fatigue. And many entrepreneurs that I coach don't recognize these signs, right? So let's review in what I just described to you of what I was going through. Let's review what some of these signs and symptoms are. So, racing thoughts, migraine headaches, achy joints, difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, difficulty waking up, exhaustion, fatigue, brain fog, depressive mood, different food cravings, the salt and sweet craving in particular, dehydration, right? If you notice that your skin is more dry than normal, you're probably dehydrated. A lowered immune system, just general irritability, right? Lack of concentration, increased forgetfulness, reduced productivity, right? If you're a multitasker, that can even be a sign you're trying to do too much and it's actually reducing your productivity. So I'm sure you can see how all of these symptoms, can easily be misinterpreted if they're taken out of context or if you're viewing them individually. So you've got to start looking at the whole picture. What is the big picture of what I'm dealing with and what my symptoms are? And see, is it actually burnout, right? Where it's been, like I said, got misdiagnosed for me. Maybe it's been misdiagnosed for you. So I wanted to bring your attention to that. And now talk about, what are we going to do about it? But my clients describe this feeling as though they're always behind. They can never catch up. There's never enough hours in the day. Anxiety is deeper than a typical worry of like a future outcome. That's generally how we think of anxiety being, the uncertainty of not knowing what's coming, all the what ifs. But for the high achiever, it looks different. For that high performer, it looks different. And it can be this fear of getting it wrong, fear of disappointing people, or even disappointing God. That was a big one for me. I wouldn't have said that I was necessarily like a people pleaser, but I was definitely a God pleaser. I was working for God. Another way it can come out is fear of being judged, right? People pleasing. I just said that. Fear of failure, even fear of success, right? What are people going to think if I'm actually that successful, if I make that much money? My family's never, that's not who we are. We haven't done that before. So there can be fear of success there as well, which you'll start self-sabotaging when that's there. So being hypercritical of yourself or others, right? Self-identify as, again, I'm just describing some of the clients I've worked with, or I should say the majority that I've worked with. That also ties into what we're talking about, right? They self-identify as perfectionists who struggle with procrastination. Anybody else? I can raise my hand on that one. Been there, done that, right? Constantly overthinking, overanalyzing, difficulty making decisions, right? Struggling with saying no to people and having a tendency to dwell on past mistakes, letting the past hang you up and stop you from moving forward. Does that sound familiar to you? If so, hang with me. I'm going to show you what you can do about it. So, the hustle, grind, and burnout does not have to be the life you choose. You have choices. This is huge. I find so many entrepreneurs feeling like I don't have permission to do something different. I have to do what everyone else is doing. So I'm here to tell you that is not the case. You do have choices. The power is in your hands to intentionally make changes that serve you. That serve you. You don't have to feel guilty about putting yourself first. Because let me ask you this. How many clients are you going to be able to serve if you've run yourself into the ground? If you've burned out? If you've gone into adrenal fatigue? None, right? You're not going to be good to anybody. So Now that we know what burnout looks like, let's talk about how I found rest. So it was during this season that God really drew me in like never before. And I heard him say, "If you seek me with all your heart, then you will find me." Well, I thought that's what I was already doing. Right? But it wasn't, right? I didn't know how to seek. And so I'm going to walk you through that as well. But I didn't have words for it at the time, but I was really seeking out a new way of being, a new way of living, a new way of working. And all the things that I knew to do were no longer working, right? Therapy wasn't working, the medications weren't working. Praying just felt like, my words are hitting the ceiling. Scriptures that used to excite me and bring life only felt like words falling on the floor. And fasting is another thing we're taught at church, right? But fasting I was just physically hungry. Like that didn't help. So I reached out to a friend that I had made through online business. And I really struggled to articulate to her, like, what is the problem or even what I was looking for. But I knew she was the person that I needed to talk to because there was something different about her. It was obvious to me that she had a relationship with God that I had no grid for. I didn't understand it. But I saw in her a difference. Her countenance shined, and she spoke in such depth of things that I had never imagined. And it wasn't like she's more intelligent. It was just the depth of the way she described her relationship with the Lord was just so different than anything I had heard. And she asked me, "Well, if what you're doing isn't working, then what do you have to lose by trying something different?" And I want to pose that same question to you today. If you're feeling stuck in like what you're doing isn't working, what do you have to lose by trying something different? So I want to share with you this journey I went on with her and with the Lord that taught me about rest. She started mentoring me, and she was teaching me and talking about things that I had never heard in church. And one of those was that you will only trust God to the degree you believe He loves you. Now, I had grown up in church. I had grown up hearing God loves you. I knew that, right? I knew it in my head, but did I truly believe it? And what I knew about neuroscience told me that I didn't, because neuroscience says your actions display what you believe, right? You're operating out of these subconscious beliefs. So it was clear to me I was believing fear, not love. And what I discovered was my core belief about God was that He didn't love me, and I really feared that He would abandon me. If I fully surrendered to Him, if I trusted Him with everything, that He would abandon me. Now, that fear was based on things that had happened in my past. And for so many of us, that's what happens, right? We're operating out of past experience. And so I feared that He would abandon me like other people in my life had. But I realized that God was inviting me into a love relationship with Him. So I released as much fear as I could and said yes to the invitation. And for the next 6 months, I experienced the messy middle. It was ugly. Okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was ugly. And I liken it to this process of the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. If you've ever like maybe Googled that or go on YouTube and watch that, it's pretty gross. But parts of my healing really felt like that process, right? The time when the caterpillar is in this, we call it a cocoon, but it's a chrysalis, right? And he's so vulnerable in there. Anything can come and just squish it. But it actually turns almost completely liquid before the butterfly parts start reforming. And so parts of my healing did feel like this liquefaction almost, because my paradigm was being completely dismantled and shifted and changed one lie at a time. The Lord started revealing to me different lies that I had been believing that were keeping me in this performance mindset. And so layer by layer, I was just allowing Jesus to very gently, right? He's so gentle, removing these lies and then replacing them with truth, with his goodness and with his love. And so learning to work in rest is learning to work from that place of love. So let's talk about rest here. Rest is not a lack of activity. All right. It's not you sitting around just waiting for God to hand you things or put money in your bank account or bring clients to you, right? There's still work involved, but it looks very different because rest is a place in Him where you can abide. You can actually stay there, right? The veil was torn. There's no more going in and out. You can abide, being fully enveloped in love, joy, peace, and righteousness. This is a place where you can do all the tasks for your business without pressure because you now have an awareness of God is responsible for the results. He is producing, not me, right? That whole metaphor of the vine and the branch that we see in John 15, right? He's responsible. He's the vine. He's producing the outcome, the grapes, the results, right? The increase in your business. God's intention for us was always partnership, not performance. And I found so much freedom in rest as I learned to let go of this performance mentality, right? I was no longer striving for the money or the clients. I was no longer saying yes to every opportunity that came along, no longer working those 50-hour weeks with little to show for it, right? No longer missing time with my family, no longer working to earn God's love. We were now in a partnership where I received all the benefits. And it all started with me allowing Him to love me. And once I did that, I was able to embrace my identity, my worth, and my value. Knowing that I was enough just by being me. It wasn't about anything that I was doing. It was about me being who He says I am and letting go of all the shoulds, letting go of the expectations. I made an intentional choice. Lord, I'm going to partner with you and we're going to dismantle all of these old blueprints that have been put on me by everybody else. And once I did that, then I was able to confidently show up in the world, being fully myself without this fear of rejection. So if you only remember one thing that I share with you today, remember this, that you are royalty. You must believe that you are who God says you are and own it for yourself. I was stuck in a performance mindset because I believed that love came as a result of what I did. And a lot of you may be watching this thinking, that's me, right? I feel like I have to earn everything. It's all about what I'm doing, not who I am as a person. But the truth that I had to own was that I was lovable and I am worthy simply because He created me. not because of anything else. And I now know and fully believe I am enough just for being me. So, believing who you are, believing that you have choices, that you get to decide how you run your business, right? And being able to communicate those choices with the people that need to know this is how it's going to work moving forward, right? We're going to be doing things differently. So, being able to receive that love from Him is the most important thing. That's what's going to transform your life, transform your business, right? God loves you because God is love. It's His very nature. It's not a characteristic of who He is. It is who He is, right? It's the essence of who He is. He cannot help but love you. Okay, so you can't do anything to mess that up, but you have a choice in loving Him back. So you have to ask yourself, am I going to trust Him? Because you will trust God to the degree that you believe He loves you. And being able to receive that love is what is going to open you up to receive everything else that He wants to give you. This is hugely important. This is the big gold nugget here, is that you've got to be able to receive His love. And you can practice that. And I can teach you how to do that, because my mission now is to see more people free from these traps of perfectionism and unworthiness, right? He wants to give you a new definition of success. He wants you to learn to let go of that perfectionism and performance. I haven't experienced any symptoms of burnout in years since I learned this. There's been no more stress, worry, anxiety, racing thoughts, no more sleepless nights, no more exhaustion. I went from working 50 to 60 hours a week to I'm now working 10 hours a week. And my income has quadrupled. Not making claims, just telling you my experience. My income has quadrupled. My clients see the same thing. I take more vacations, more time off than I ever have. And these are not working vacations. I'm not taking my laptop with me. Like, I'm disconnected. I'm spending time with my family. I'm doing the things that I want to do. Something that I didn't know how to do before learning to live and work from rest. So my mission now is to see more people free, to change the culture of work from hustle and grind to rest and peace. I know what it's like to drown in my own unrealistic expectations, but now I also know what it's like to live differently, to operate my business from this place of resting and abiding in God instead of striving for what the world says is going to bring peace and joy. And it all starts with love. And I would love to have you join me. You can find me at heaventoearthllc.com. From there, you'll see links to multiple resources, such as my book, my YouTube channel, my courses, my programs, and my email address is even on there. And you can find out how to work with me. I'm so excited for the journey that you're on. I pray that you continue seeking the Lord in your faith and mental health journey. And I just wish you all the best and blessings to you on your journey to discovering rest.